I think everything, just about everything in life, even the good stuff, like children, uh, tends to get in the way of marriage, tends to become a wedge because I
Mm,
have to focus on the children and I don't have time to focus on my spouse. And then I got to, make money and pay the bills, and I got to take care of my parents and neighbors and friends and church, and all that stuff gets in between a couple, even the good stuff. And if you're not really intentional, it's
mhm.
easy for you just to kind of drift slowly apart as you're taking care of everything else except yourselves. And so you got to really get intentional about keeping focus on the marriage as well as everything else.
Right. Welcome to another episode of The Catholic Couple, having fun with faith, family, and friends. I'm your co-host, Bobby Fredrickson, and with me is always my beautiful wife,
Katie Fredrickson,
I'm the convert Catholic, and she's
the cradle Catholic.
And here we are on a new show, but we have a special guest. We have Doug Hinderer, who's got a brand new book out. It is called Rekindled Hearts, A Spiritual Journey to Marital Healing. And our show, we try to do once a month. We do a show on marriage. So, just want to introduce Doug really quick. He's a family therapist who has a private teletherapy practice in Illinois. He speaks on all different topics concerning marriage. He actually hosts a show on Relevant Radio entitled Marriage Unhindered, and he's been married for 44 years to his wife, Shirley. He has 9 children and 8
God
grandchildren.
Yeah.
So
We're almost up to 10 grandchildren now. So we got a couple. Yeah.
That's
oh, wow.
awesome.
The
Awesome.
numbers keep going up, which is a good thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that
so
is great.
beautiful.
So yeah, you were kind enough to send us the book, and Katie didn't get a chance, but I got a chance to go through it, and I kind of briefed her on a lot of it, and I thought it was excellent. I think there's a lot of great stuff that we can unpack through this. So we're just going to have a conversation, and we'll see where it goes from there. But the first thing that I thought was interesting is that the reason that you said that you wrote the book is because couples living lives of quiet desperation in marriages that have grown stale and lifeless, that seems to be a common theme of, especially as people get older, and
Or I'd say as we get busier, right? That
Yeah.
it's no matter your stage in life, this world continues to be busier and busier and busier and suck up all of our energy, time, and attention. So then these things end up on a back burner, or things that maybe need to take a lot of time and energy just seem overwhelming.
Well, yeah, and I think everything, just about everything in life, even the good stuff, like children, uh, tends to get in the way of marriage, tends to become a wedge because I have to focus on the children and I don't have time to focus on my spouse. And then I got to, make money and pay the bills, and I got to take care of my parents and neighbors and friends and church, and all that stuff gets in between a couple, even the good stuff. And if you're not really intentional, it's easy for you just to kind of drift slowly apart as you're taking care of everything else except yourselves. And so you got to really get intentional about keeping focus on the marriage as well as everything else.
So what was the reason why you wrote the book the way that you did? I thought it was very interesting is that it's a story of a guy and a girl who are going through, they're having issues in their marriage, and the Holy Spirit guides them to confession, each separately. And then the story unravels about they're telling their problems to their spiritual director, to the priest, and he's unfolding through these chapters. But how did that idea come about? How to write it like that? Yeah. And then I don't want to ruin
I like
it,
it because it makes it relevant,
Yeah.
It makes it applicable. Like, you can identify with the.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It was not the book I had set out to write. I was going to write just kind of your typical old book where the author just gives you stuff and you read it like anything else, right? I've got my oldest daughter is a journalist, and so I don't know anything about writing books. She's a pretty good writer, so we rented an Airbnb for a week, the two of us, and we locked ourselves away and we crafted out the book. She helped me, and we had flip chart paper on the walls and all that kind of stuff.
Idea, and I love that it was with your daughter.
It was great. Yeah. And I would call her my ghostwriter, but ghosts don't have bodies, and she does. So I don't know what you would call her. But she was very helpful in that. And the thing of it, I wanted it to be a spiritual book because we just don't, the formation we just don't see the spiritual aspect of what marriage is all about. and the sacrificial nature and sanctifying the suffering and all that stuff. I've got great credibility as a marriage therapist, but not as a spiritual director. I mean, I'm Catholic. I'm the cradle. My wife is the convert.
Oh, cool.
There you go. But I thought in order to have some sort of credibility in what I was saying of a spiritual nature, it would be nice if it was coming from a priest. So what would start off to be just your standard old marriage self-help book turned into kind of a novel that's taken place in the context of spiritual direction. So when we actually sat down, started writing it, this whole novel idea came out. So I don't know if it was a Holy Spirit moment or not, but we took an entirely right turn from what we initially envisioned.
Did you seek counsel from a priest's perspective to help write and draft those parts of it?
No, I did not. Well, yes and no. I mean, I've been in spiritual direction for about 35 years. So I just kind of tapped into with probably with probably 4 or 5 different priests over that time.
Yeah.
So I just kind of tapped into what that was all about.
Do you want to touch on real quick? Because a lot of people don't know what's the difference between spiritual direction and getting actual therapy from somebody like yourself. Yeah. What are some of the differences? You touch a little bit on that in the book, which I liked. You said that the differences between spiritual direction and psychotherapy. Spiritual direction focuses on our spiritual growth, deepening your connection with God. And how does that differ from somebody like yourself who would help them?
Yeah. So when in therapy, we focus on what's wounded, what's broken in your psyche, what's going wrong emotionally in your world, and how are you seeing the world in perhaps a distorted way. And the way I talk about it is we all wear glasses, and all of us have glasses that have distortions in them, but I'm not aware that my glasses are distorted. I know yours are. I know you're not seeing things the right way. But my way is the right way. Well, so in therapy, I try to help you see the distortions that you're seeing things through, how you're bringing childhood wounds and injuries into the marriage and how that's distorting how you view your spouse, et cetera. So we look in therapy, we look more at emotion and what the thinking is going on inside your brain. And in spiritual direction, look at what's going on in the soul and how you can sanctify where you are and how you can use whatever's going on in your life to draw you closer to God, grow in virtue, grow in holiness.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I love that.
Well, I think it's important to have, both. And if you don't have a spiritual director, try to seek one out. I'm in between spiritual directors myself. Katie goes like once a month. She tries to
like every other month.
Every other month.
Yeah.
Yeah. She would prefer to go once a month, but she's
that's not reality.
Yeah.
No. Gotta do what works, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
She was racing straight here. She's a principal at a Catholic school, so she was racing. I was getting dinner. We're wrangling the kids and doing
the time of year where it is crazy. But this is great because again, it's kind of forcing us to talk about marriage. I made the joke before we got on, like, "Oh, would you do a little session with us?"
Yeah.
While we have you.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, that's I think that's part of it because a lot of times, like we're the Catholic couple, so it's like we should talk about marriage and family from time to time, but we do both have interest in talking about everything about the church. But she feels a lot of times like, well, we're not perfect. We're not a perfect couple, so
I don't feel like an authority to speak on relationship advice personally. I think you would be a person to do that, right? Like, so that's why I liked the idea of having guests, right, that can offer these perspectives that I can help and apply in my own life and marriage, and then also, have someone who's credible. To me, I value authenticity and being genuine, and I feel like if I fall short in something, I'm not someone to speak on it.
Well, I like the line that you wrote, though. You said, marriage, we have two imperfect people who are trying to love perfectly.
Right.
And that's like when we do talk about it, I'm never saying we are perfect. I know we have a lot of room to grow, but we are both looking towards Christ. That's one thing we are doing, but we do fall short. We're sinful. We bring our wounds. We bring all this baggage that we bring in that maybe we could be helped by having someone talk some of these issues out, because a lot of the same issues keep coming up over and over again. But I do see where she's coming from, where it does feel almost like imposter syndrome when you're talking about things about marriage, and that goes for everything. Like no one's like got it all together. I'm sure you've had fights with your wife just like everybody else. Not that, but that's your thing. So
last night we had a nice one.
Okay,
see, all right, see, here we go. Yeah.
So listen, if you had to be perfect to talk about marriage, none of us would be doing it. I'm working hard at it, and my wife's working hard at it, and we're not perfect, and we get it wrong sometimes. And I think the two most important things you can say in a marriage is the six most important words: I am sorry, I forgive you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you get a chance to say that at least once a day and maybe a dozen times a day. And that's okay. I mean, I love you even with your defects.
Right.
I didn't know what they were when we were dating. I thought you were perfect. Well, you know, came home from the honeymoon. I'm like, oh, there's a defect or two,
Yeah.
and so that's okay. That just means we're work in progress.
Yeah.
And God bless, we're working it through, and we love each other unconditionally. And sometimes we're just not going to get along real well. That doesn't mean you got a bad marriage.
Mhm.
And I love the line. I already turned this into like a quote that I'll share this week with an image on it. It says, "Nowhere in life do we get more opportunities to forgive than in marriage."
Yeah.
And I really like that theme throughout the whole entire book of this idea of suffering and forgiveness. That if we want to know that example, we look to Christ, obviously. But can you speak some more about suffering within marriages? Because I think this is part of what the issue and the problem is, that
And our
we think,
culture,
yes,
our
in our
culture sets this idea that, well, you don't make me happy anymore,
Mhm.
so I
It's
need
all
to
feelings.
so that it's all my feelings, and
Yeah.
you don't do what you used to do for me, so we need to go our separate ways, right?
Mhm.
Let's amicably split up. This whole
Yeah.
idea that
Yeah.
marriage is something you can throw away, with our faith, it's the opposite, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that, how do we battle the culture as Catholics, and how do we embrace that idea of that suffering?
Yeah. So I think that's great. And that's the reason I wrote the book, because every marriage has suffering, every single marriage. Some have more, some have big suffering. I had a guy who called into the show on Friday, and he was in tears. He just married 30 years, just found out his wife's been having an affair for the last 30 years or last 3 years. And he hasn't even talked to her about it yet. He just found out, and he was in tears. That's
Wow.
big suffering. Most of us don't have that big of suffering, but we got all the little stuff. Like, you came home and you were cranky and you snapped at me. I didn't do anything wrong. It's not my fault, right? Well, I know.
Right.
Um, but the idea is, and the thing that is so countercultural and that is so Catholic, is this idea that suffering is a good thing. It
Mhm.
is how we redeem ourselves, how we redeem our souls, how we redeem our spouses and our children. Of all the ways that Christ could have picked to redeem mankind, he picked suffering.
Right.
One drop of blood would have been enough to redeem all of mankind. And yet he suffered unbelievable, right? To save us. Suffering is such a good thing that he did not even spare his own mother.
Mm.
Right.
If you could
Right.
spare your mother suffering, would you do it?
Right.
In a
Yes.
heartbeat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No, not him. In fact, Saint Alphonse Liguori is of the opinion that Mary's suffering exceeded the suffering of all the martyrs combined.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so if God, Jesus Christ, is going to allow his mother to suffer so much, there's got to be a lot of good that comes out of it. So
Mhm.
not something to be avoided, something. So here's the deal. And the research is pretty clear. 69% of the conflicts that couples have, so 70%, is not solvable. You're not going to fix it. 30% you will. Okay, good. What
Oh.
do I do with that 70%? Well, let's sanctify it. Let's use it to turn it into the currency that we're going to use to buy heaven with, right? Let's sanctify our suffering. And Bishop Sheen, one of my favorite quotes is, suffering is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes.
Mhm.
So you get a chance to suffer a lot in marriage. Let's not waste it.
Can you give an example of that 70% that's unsolvable? Like,
Sure.
what is something that's unsolvable?
Sure. For instance, I am a morning person. 6 a.m. is the best hour of the day in my life. It's
Amen.
all downhill after 6 a.m. My wife is a night owl. She catches her second wind like when I'm going to bed, and she's good for 3-4 hours. She gets up till midnight, 1 in the morning.
Mhm.
Well, we run into conflicts about that with some regularity, right? Like Sunday morning, I want to be at 7 a.m. mass. She would
Uh-huh.
like to be there at noon. At noon, the day's half over. I can't. So,
Yeah.
so we have this conflict all the time about, me wanting to get going early and her wanting to, you know, so we're not going to fix that. So we got to compromise on that, meet in the middle, and do that kind of thing.
So that is not fixable. You can't just become a morning person if you will it.
Yeah. Well, Well, this is
Interesting. Tell me
well,
more about
that's just part of
unsolvable
how people who are married, we end up finding the opposites. Like, and I know Rick Warren always says, like, turtles marry skunks. Like, I'm a skunk. If something's bothering me, I let everybody know, and she bottles it up. And it's like there seems to be that tension that usually opposites attract and things like that. So, but
so just more about knowing how to navigate it and communicate well with each other on how to, compromise and work through it, but you're not going to solve it. So, but you can work through it.
Right. I mean, I love the fact, especially when we had young kids, the fact that she was a night owl was great, because she would, if the kid woke up and, early, or she'd get him to bed or whatever. And if the kid got up at 3 a.m. or 4, I'd get up because I'm ready to go. Right.
Yeah.
And so it worked out. It was very complimentary. Right. It worked out really well when we had small kids. And so to appreciate the fact that God made us different on purpose. I mean, he could have, when he made Adam and he said, that boy needs some help, he could have created another guy who was going to help him, build a barn, plow a field, watch football on Sundays, whatever. He created a woman, radically different, to complement. And we have to really learn to love the differences and see them for their value, as opposed to the fact that they cause me irritation sometimes.
Yeah. And those differences are what I think also makes it interesting. Is like, if we were always getting along, we'd find reason to make it not. Like, if everything was perfect, I forgot who wrote that. It's like, if we're always trying to this utopian, but if we had it, we would get bored about everything being perfect. We would mess it up somehow, so it wouldn't be so predictable.
Well, and very interesting. I was just reading an article today about why online dating has such a poor success rate, because when you put the profile in of what you're looking for, you're putting in your profile. So you're looking for somebody exactly like you, and then you go out on a date and you're like, well, that's boring. I want somebody different.
Date myself.
I'm dating myself. Well, that's exciting. So you need the differences, and you need to celebrate the differences and really love them.
So what is redemptive suffering? What are some examples of how we can take these things that are, things that are bothering us about our spouses or other ways? What are some practical ways that Catholics can turn that into redemptive suffering? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I think, for instance, let's say you're married to somebody who has a tendency to be late. Okay. Well, now you can use that irritation, that annoyance you feel every time you're sitting in the car and your spouse isn't ready yet, to grow in the virtue of patience. Right. And so it's like, okay, Lord, I'm irritated now, but I'm going to offer this irritation up for that I grow in the virtue of patience. For my children, that none of them lose the faith, that they all embrace the faith as adults. Right. So I can take this suffering and attach it to some good outcome. I'm offering this for my wife, so that, she stays firm in the faith, right? Or for whatever the thing of it is, for my mother, for this person who's sick, that they get better, and whatever, right? So whatever suffering I'm enduring, I'm going to unite that with Christ and offer that for whatever my intention is. And we all have a lot of things that we need to pray for.
Yes, we do.
So I have a question on that, especially from your perspective as a therapist. In keeping silent in certain times and offering that up, that is a very good thing to do. But at what point does it become where you're a doormat and you're not communicating your own needs and expectations, and like coming from a turtle, right? Who will silently suffer for a long time and then explode in the most ridiculous way over nonsense. I feel like I'm quiet on things and I let them go. I should try the prayer. That's actually really good.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
I think that I start to, I look like a crazy person when I finally snap, but it's because I didn't address it in the moment, but I also don't want to be a nag, know?
Right.
So it's like, when am I not a nag? When do I offer it up? When do I speak my mind? Right.
Yeah. That's as typical as it gets. I mean, this is textbook typical how things go in marriages. And so here's the way I talk about it. Try to fix it. And if you get it fixed, boom, you're good. And if you can't get it fixed, well, now that's the thing I got to offer up. Right. And so, but I teach a very specific 3-step approach to trying to fix the problem.
Mhm.
And it starts off with the phrase, I feel,
Mhm.
followed by when you,
Mhm.
followed by, and I'd like to ask you to please. So here's how this goes. I feel worried and anxious when you come home late and don't call and tell me you're going to be late.
Mhm.
I'd like to ask you to please call if you're going to be more than 15 minutes late.
Mhm.
Oh, sure, I can do that. As opposed to, you're late again. Don't you know how to tell time? Is your
Yeah.
phone broken? Don't you know I'm sitting there worried? That's not going to solve
Delivery
it.
is a lot of it too.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of we read. Have you ever read 1 Minute Father or 1 Minute Manager?
I read 1 Minute Manager back in the day when I was in the corporate
Yeah,
world. Yeah.
it's kind of the same thing as like separating the person with
From the
like from the
behavior.
behavior. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, with our kids, it's like, hey, when you do this, I feel angry, but but separating, when they do this thing versus, but that's not, because a lot of people, they hear this, it feels like a personal attack.
Yeah.
Separating the behavior and them say, but I love you. But I like that add on the I feel makes me, and then the please, would you
See,
change
here's
this
the
thing?
thing, right? And the reason this works is because I want to be the perfect husband. I don't ever want to do anything that upsets my wife. And if I'm doing something that upsets her, I want to know about that so I can change it. And if you can tell me that in a way that doesn't come across as criticism or contempt or making me feel like a jerk, I'm going to say, good, thank you for that. I mean, one of the most common complaints I hear from the husbands is, I will do anything for my wife. I just need to know what it is.
Yes.
We want them to just know.
And you just should know. If you love me, you would know. No, I'm not that smart. I'm a guy. I'm
Yeah.
not.
So I'm sorry, let's repeat it. I feel when you, is that,
And I'd like to ask you to please, right.
and I'd like
But
to
you got to do it in that order because you put it on yourself and you talk about your feelings. Because see, I don't want you to feel anxious. I don't ever want to do anything to make you feel worried. Oh, and if me coming home late and not calling makes you feel worried, I can fix that.
Mhm.
Right.
And that's in the book too. I remember you talking about that in the book, and that's what's the good part about this book. Once again, Rekindled Hearts. Check this out. It's definitely worth the read, but because it goes through a lot of these situations, but like in a dialogue, but it's all the same things that we're talking about. Hey, this, I don't feel appreciated, or I'm working too late, or then all these different issues. So you give real world examples in real time. But I remember you putting that strategy in there. So.
And it's really powerful. And the couples I've worked with who have made some really good progress have said, you know what, we decided that's how we're going to talk to each other from here on out. And we made a promise to each other that when I hear you start a conversation with the words, I feel, I'm going to pay close attention to what you're saying because I'm about to learn something really important about how to love you.
And I'm
And
going to
that's what I
drop
know.
my defenses, right? And that's
Correct.
like an automatic, like I'm not going to come at this like as an attack. You're making sure to verbalize it in a way that you don't want it to be an attack. And I'm going to respect that from you, that I'm not going to take it as an attack. It's almost
Correct.
like a
Non-aggressive.
an unspoken agreement, right?
Yeah.
That we're just going to put down our weapons right
Yeah.
now and just have a real conversation.
I tell my couples, write that out and put it on your refrigerator.
Yeah.
So you're constantly reminded, I feel when you like to ask you to please. And if you just make that part of your basic lexicon, you're going to overcome especially the little problems. You're going to knock those things out really fast.
It's a good thing. Like you said, like with the 1 minute reprimand and 1 minute praise that we do with the kids. And it was very easy to get them to understand that. I think this could work with children too. If you want a behavior that is not stopping, if you want, that as well.
Yeah, with the please you can put in, and then at the end you can put, and if you don't, this is going to be
And then you add those
this is the consequence. Could you please do this? But if you don't, then this is obviously you don't want to do that with your spouse, but with your kids,
Well, it depends on what it is, right?
Yeah.
It depends on it. Yeah, right. If you choose not to do this, then you're grounded till you're 17 or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other thing that really struck me from the book was, and I know because I read these quotes many times, is that obviously we talked that there was suffering, but that suffering, the more suffering, the bigger, the more that God is like blessing you. It's like, it's almost counterintuitive to what we think, but Saint Faustina and Saint Ignatius, you quote in the book that suffering shouldn't always be viewed as such a negative, but in a lot of times it's an opportunity, or it's almost like a crucible that God's putting us in his hands, not to test us because he's trying to be mean, but there's a lot of times the suffering is because there's something that we did or there's something that needs to go away. Some of it is,
Encouraging.
you know, forced on us
Purification.
from outside. Some comes from our own, you know, sinfulness. But sometimes I think where people have a really hard time is the thing when it's not something that I did, it was something that was just pushed on me. And I think people have a hard time with that. So my question would be is, what are some ways for people to do that together as a, like, I know to offer it up and, you know, suffer silently, but to enter into that together as a married couple of a way, use strategies to try to help each other, you know, because it's a lot easier, obviously, to do it together, especially, you know, people who are practicing their faith, go to mass and pray together and those kinds of things. I've tried how to do that.
I'd like to add in like that you're almost asking your spouse for empathy to your situation though, right? Like you're asking them to see your perspective and what you're going through, and that takes a dialogue, right?
Yeah. Empathy is a really important thing. One of the most important things we can do as spouses is to affirm and to praise our spouse, especially when they're in a bad place, right? So, you know, you come home from work and you say, you know what, man, this parent jumped on me today, was yelling at me and just made me feel terrible. It's an opportunity then for Bobby to say, come here, let me hold you. Let me tell you what a great person you are and how fortunate these parents are that you're at the school and that you're a really good person and they shouldn't treat you like that. Know that I appreciate you and that I love you. Right.
And not try to solve the problem. Well, you know, you should tell this parent this.
That's every guy's problem.
That's the number one problem us guys have. And rarely. Yeah. And I think the way to do that is don't solve the problem. And then at some point you could say, you know, would you like me to make a suggestion? No, I don't. Fine. I'm not going to.
We just had a date night the other night, and that was on the way to date night. She was kind of unloading, and she's like, "I don't want your opinion."
I said nicely. I said, "I just wanted you to know. I appreciate
that up front because I will eventually forget and just jump in and try to be a know-it-all or
correct
that.
Correct.
And that's so much of like, she needs to remember that I'm guys are boneheads a lot of times, and we just don't think. It's just we're just having a conversation. I have to stop and think. You know, hey, is this a problem you just want to unload it, or you want some advice? And we forget. So I think, like I said, this communicated expectations of what it is, it makes it a lot easier, especially if it's done in a way, hey, I just want to get this off my chest. I would ask you just to listen and be there for me. I'm like, hey, that's a great strategy. We're definitely going to write this out. And
I'm totally writing this on the refrigerator. I'm taking that exact.
Or we got a little board. We got a little board.
Yes. I'm writing that on the dry erase board.
One of the recommendations that John Gottman has, he's kind of the guru, the marriage guru in this country, is at the end of the day, when you come back together again, is to have a 10-minute stress-reducing conversation. And when he says, you sit down, you say, okay, tell me what went wrong for you today. And now you got 5 minutes to just let it out. Yeah. And then your spouse says, I love you. Thanks so much for putting up with all of this garbage you got to put up with all day long. And I love you. Come here, let me give you a. And then it's my chance. Well, all this bad stuff came out today. Good. I love you too. Thanks so much. You get loud. It's like taking a shower. You get rid of all that dust. Now we're going to go have a good time with the family, have a nice meal, and enjoy.
I love that too. We're going to write that on the fridge. How many things?
I don't know about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I could do a 5 minute. We could 10 minutes. I hope every day isn't 10 minutes of just.
He means 5 minutes for you, 5 minutes for me, right?
All right. Yeah. Right. Or 2 minutes, whatever it is. But maybe you don't. Maybe it's like nothing bad happened to me today. Great. Let's celebrate that.
Yes. Right? Amen.
Yeah.
So from all the what are some of the other, like, from this book of what we like to say here is like each other is a cross that we are called to die to ourselves, that like when we get married, like she's literally my person to forgive the most, my person that I'm going to deny myself the most for, the person who I'm going to have to bite my tongue, or all these things, humility, all those things. What are some ways that if we are having a big fight, what are some good ways to initiate reconciliation right away
Or
to
de-escalation.
de-escalate when it's starting to get heated up. Like I'm the type of guy who likes to just get space. I need space, and she's like, no, come back here. You know,
I want resolution. I want resolution. I want
like
closure.
I'm a hothead, so I'm like, I need space sometimes.
So is this one of those 70% unsolvables? You're not.
No, this is workable, right? But each have your own thing. So what the research shows is that once your heart rate gets above about 100 beats per minute, you've lost your ability to be rational. Now you're just in fight or flight. And if you want to fight, let's go, let's do it. Or I don't want to fight. I'm getting out of here. I don't want to get in a big fight again. All right. So the solution is to be able to call the timeout and say, okay, listen, I got to take a break because I'm getting pretty worked up, but I'm coming back. So if I come back in an hour, can we pick this back up? Okay, fine. Now the wife isn't feeling abandoned, like you're just walking away. You've got time to calm down. She needs time to calm down too, reformulate the argument or whatever. But I'm coming back. So the idea is you got to say when you're coming back. That's the key. And sometimes you're so upset, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to calm down until like tomorrow. So can we pick this up tomorrow, or can we table this till Saturday or whatever? But the deal is we're going to come back and we're going to get it resolved. We're not going to just leave it, at this heightened state. So that's call the timeout, then come back.
No,
that's coming, announce the comeback, not
say I'm going to leave, but I'm coming back. I'm not just taking off
and
you're never going to see me again.
Well, that's not what the thought is. It's just more that there are a lot of unresolved things, because what happens is, the fight ends, you storm off, and then we really don't have any kind of
closure
or solution to the problem or whatever. And then it comes back 3 weeks later in another fight, and I just want to solve it. But now that I know that 70% aren't solvable, I don't like.
But here's the deal. But
everything.
But appreciating the fact that this problem isn't solvable is the solution. Because now I'm not going to keep beating my head against the wall, expecting you to do something that you can't do. Right. So now it's like, okay, we try to solve what we can't. Now I know this is my opportunity to sanctify this thing that's going on between the two of us, because we're not going to get it fixed.
How could couples navigate what's solvable and unsolvable? Or is that just something that's based on their personal, No,
well, I think once it's not solvable, then you got to get to the place of compromise. Okay. So like with my wife and I, what time we go to bed, what time we get up in the morning, what time we're going to mass, what time we're leaving to go here. So it's a compromise. And that's just it. I mean, marriage is built on compromise, and just appreciating the fact that we're not going to get aligned on everything. That's okay. Doesn't mean it's a bad marriage. Doesn't mean we got to throw the baby out of the bathwater. In fact, I was talking about it on today's show. The number one thing that successful couples have, successful defined as that don't get divorced, is when they're not getting along, when they're in conflict, they still treat each other with respect. And the couples that get divorced become very disrespectful. They fall into name calling, devaluing, and all this stuff. But even if I'm mad at you, if I'm still treating you with respect, we're going to work it out, right? Or we'll get to a place of compromise. So that part about respect is just really, really important in any marriage, to be able to treat each other with respect, even when you're angry.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I've seen the other studies. Is the other big thing is that you become the best friends, good friends, having something other than just, intimacy or raising kids, but that you want to share your life together, and like you want to tell each other about your day. You want to share the highs and the lows with each other.
Right. And that comes from that friendship in marriage comes from emotional safety. That I feel that I can come to you with whatever's weighing me down, burdening me, crushing me, and you're safe. You're not going to criticize me. You're not going to blame me. You're not going to get defensive. You're going to sit here and say, wow, that's got to be tough. I'm with you on this one. This is a tough one. Let me hold you. Let me be compassionate. Let me be empathetic with you. So I'm the safe part. And the way I talk about it is you put your hands out in front of you like this, you make a circle. And when you're inside my circle, you're now in the safest place on the planet. Nothing can hurt you when you're inside here, because I'm here to protect you. Right. So come on in here, come on into the ring of safety, and you're good. And I'm not letting you out until your heart rate is back to normal.
So if if couples aren't in that place where they're feeling that way with their spouse?
Yeah.
Are there certain, activities, discussions, that can help them get there?
Yeah. Yes, I do. And I think I would plug in what I call the formula. I feel when you, I'd like to ask you to please, right? Um, and sometimes, some individuals in marriages aren't willing to change. They're like, if you got a problem, you got a problem. I'm not changing. That's a tough thing. And that's kind of why I wrote the book in like individual spiritual direction that says, okay, here's what you can do to improve the marriage by fixing you, you
Mhm.
know, and I can't fix my spouse. All I can do is open the door and
Mhm.
say, hey, here's what I'd like to invite you to do. Here's how I would like to invite you to treat me different. Because I feel really worried when you come home late. And I'd like to invite you to please call if you're going to be late. I can say, well, I ain't doing that. Okay, well, now I got to live with that, right? So
Right.
I invite you to change. But for me, I can look in the mirror in the morning and say, okay, you're going to start being more thoughtful of your wife. And if you're running late or you're hung up in traffic, you're going to call and
Mhm.
I'm going to do it. So that's the deal. And I think, but we can invite our spouse to change, but we can force ourselves to change.
I really like that in the book. What you do is, like, a lot of times for a lot of books, you read it, you read a book and then you never really put it into action. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
what ends up happening is you forget, like, what was it? Like, I'll write notes, all the stuff, but you have action steps at the end of each thing. You're giving, like, you're the spiritual director and you're giving them the advice to do. And I really like that. It's like
yeah.
you gave them like a phrase or like a mantra almost for the week to repeat, or the 2 weeks before they go back to
Mm-hmm.
meet with the priest again. Then you have something to pray with, which is
Mm-hmm.
a psalm or a line of scripture. And then you give them like a short read, this something that has to pertain to this issue of
Right.
suffering or forgiveness or not feeling you know appreciated, or whatever that situation for each of those different chapters of as you're unfolding the story.
Yeah.
And then you give a do, which is like something, obviously, where there's no love, put love, or practical advice to do that. I thought
Yeah.
that was really good. I want to kind of go back with her when we have some time to kind of go through some of those things, because what you're talking about in the book, it's not it's normal what most couples are going through. This
Right.
isn't like she's it's normal stuff. It's suffering, but it's not like it's out of the question that most people are going through
Right.
these similar things that you laid out. It isn't
Right.
so unique to this one, this person and that
It's
person.
applicable. It's a
Yeah.
norm.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So there was three things I tried to accomplish in the book, which is for a guy who never wrote a book before to try to accomplish three things. And I have no idea if I was successful. First is I wanted to write a book you could sit down and read it. You get your cup of coffee and sit and read your book. The other is I wanted to write a book that you could actually pray with. So you could take it with you into an adoration chapel. You can read a few paragraphs or a page and sit and reflect on it and see if our Lord wants to enlighten you as to how you might be able to use some of that content in your own marriage. And then I wanted a book that was actually kind of a workbook, which is how you get to the end of each chapter, where it's got some specific things you could do if you want to really focus on whatever that particular chapter was about, improving that thing. So you can read it, pray it, or work it, however you want to use it. And that was my goal. So I don't know if that was successful or not, but that's what I tried to do.
No, I thought it was great. I wish I would have took more time with it. I read the first couple chapters, like I was reading like one a day, but then I kind
Yeah.
of hammered through like too many chapters at one time.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Go back and
because
digest it.
yeah, it's just like to focus on and pray with it, and to I looked up the articles, and the quotes are
Yeah.
excellent and things like that. So no, we do appreciate you writing this, and all the advice that you've given us. Do you have anything else you want to ask before we
No, I think that, I feel like I've covered most of my questions.
yeah, it was like veiled Ann Arbor.
Veiled therapy here. Right. Exactly.
Which
Trying
is,
to get a free session in.
hey,
There you go.
and that's the thing. Like, we're not perfect, and
No.
but like you said, we both want to get better.
Well,
and
listen,
that's it. We
yeah.
have both mindset when it comes to it.
And let me just affirm the two of you, which is why it's so important that the two of you are out there saying, hey, we're doing this thing together. Yeah. And we ain't perfect either, but we're a Catholic couple and we're trying to bring Christ into the world and be a role model for people and let you know that we're struggling like everybody else. That's not stopping us. We're still moving forward. So we really need folks like you out there doing the work you do. So thank you for what
I
you're
think
doing.
the devil does discourage, right? He's the one
Yeah.
that's whispering that that's not of God, to say,
Who are you
that
guys to
who are
talk
you
about marriage?
right. So I think that
Yeah. Don't
it's
listen to
the
the
same-
great deceiver. Right.
Yeah.
yeah, and the same thing with the suffering too. What God is, I think it's just a constant discernment of the voice that's in your head on whether or not it's helping or hurting,
Yeah.
and whether
Yeah.
or not it's God's or not of God. So, wow,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I feel like I'm personally like mulling over a lot of different things and digesting this. Um, I definitely am reading this. I'm
Yeah,
definitely
for
going and
sure.
writing those things right now
Yeah.
on our board.
Well,
A lot. I have a lot.
once again, the book is Rekindled Hearts. It is a spiritual journey to marital healing. Doug Hinderer. Where can people find the book and find you if they want to get in contact with you
Yeah.
with the
So you could go to Scepter. Scepter's the publisher. You can go right to their website, order it from there. Or Relevant Radio. It's for sale in the Relevant Radio store. You go to the Relevant Radio website, click on the store button, and the book is there for sure. And you can email me at doug@relevantradio.com if you want to. And I read a lot of these emails on the air. Anonymously. I don't give names. But whatever you're dealing with, the odds are a lot of other people out there are dealing with it too. So I read a lot of the
when can they
emails.
catch your show? What days are you on?
Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. But if you go to either the Relevant Radio app or the website, you can just download. You can get all the past shows, so you can listen to them at any time you want to.
And the name of that show is Marriage Unhindered.
Unhindered, right?
On Relevant Radio. That's awesome.
I didn't think of that, but that's
that's a good idea. I like
well,
it.
it was a take obviously on your last name. So.
That's the deal.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. We appreciate your time and we appreciate you having all this experience sharing with us. We have 14 years. We're not close to where you're at, but there's hope that we don't have to have it all solved. We're not going to figure it all out. We're going to keep trying.
We're at 44 years. So, and as I was back in school and learning how to do all this stuff, I'd bring these ideas home and my wife would say, you know how many fights we wouldn't have had over the past 35 years if we'd have known this? But yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So I just feel blessed to be able to share this information with people and hopefully, it can improve a marriage or two. And that's a good thing.
Awesome.
So
well, thank you so much. We really do appreciate taking the time.
My pleasure. Take care. Yeah.
God bless.
Thank you.